Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Sound Opinions, the world's only rock and roll talk show. Sound Opinions is brought to you by MetroMix.com, Chicago's most complete online entertainment guide.
I'm Jim DeRogatis, rock critic for the Chicago Sun-Times.
And I'm Greg Kot. I write about the music that rocks for the Chicago Tribune.
And I'm Marty Lennartz, and tonight we have, I think we're going to have a great show tonight.
A heck of a show. We've got Robyn Hitchcock, the long-running psychedelic visionary artist of the Egyptians, of the Soft Boys, of Robyn Hitchcock solo.
Absolutely, and we have Wayne Coyne, Flaming Lips auteur. And I think the witty repartee will be flying tonight, in addition to some songs.
Oh, definitely. They were just in town over the weekend at Metro for the Music Against Brain Degeneration review.
A fascinating multi-band bill, $22, 4 bands, a DJ, multimedia, and headphones.
And my summer's over as far as I'm concerned, Jim. I've just seen the best show of the summer, so there's no need to go to any more shows. Don't you agree?
We open ourselves, I think, Greg, on occasion to almost... I mean, if someone were so inclined to denigrate our fine character or journalistic quality, they could say that we are cheerleaders, if not fellators, of the Flaming Lips. When you see an artist in rock and roll that's this inspiring to us, I mean, there are distinctive reasons we champion these bands. Because they're doing something that nobody else is doing, and it's so much fun, and it's so inspiring.
Still taking chances, still pushing the proverbial envelope. I mean, it sounds like a cliche, but these guys just stamp out cliches. I mean, their whole career has been devoted to not repeating themselves.
You know, we're Midwestern rock critics. We try to be anti-pretentious, right? There's that school of New York rock critic, Village Voice, Spin, that says everything that can be done with 2 guitars, bass, and drums has been done. To which I say, Pisha. You know what I mean? And you see somebody like the Flaming Lips, and they're completely reinventing the idea of a 3-minute rock song.
Oh, man.
At this point, 50 years into this thing, you know, that's a good trick.
Inventing the rock band. I think we saw, a multimedia circus the other night as opposed to just a rock show. What the Lips are doing is sort of trying to reinvent the wheel. And we're going to talk to Wayne Coyne about, Wayne, just what the heck are you thinking? I mean, they're spending a lot of money to do this out of their own pocket to make sure that everybody's having a good time. They're buying headphones and passing them out to the crowd. I mean, I've never seen anything like this.
You know, and Hitchcock walked in, the first thing he says is, "Hello, boys, Uncle Bob is here." And, of course, Hitchcock of a different generation, slightly older than Wayne. It's going to be interesting to put those two guys together.
Well, guys, I just want to say that, you've been talking about the Flaming Lips so much over the past few weeks, and that naturally I think I had a little backlash against the band. Just a little bit. And I've been a Flaming Lips fan, but, you're going on and on about the record. I listened to the record, and at first listen, I was like, I don't know what they're talking about. But the more I listen to it, it's just an amazing record. And then this weekend really just threw the hammer down. It's just an incredible show. And we'll be talking about that show with Wayne Coyne.
Indeed.
And Robyn Hitchcock will be here a little bit later on. As the show progresses, we'll have an album review tonight of the brand new Los Lobos record.
Good. No.
Well, it is Sound Opinions on XRT tonight. We have both Robyn Hitchcock and Wayne Coyne of the Flaming Lips here live. Now, before we go to Robyn Hitchcock, I think we should talk about some of the things that Flaming Lips have done in their concerts in the past. The show that we saw over the weekend with headphones. Headphones were passed out to people to listen to the show on headphones.
The entire show
and experience it at the same time.
Yeah, broadcast on an FM frequency and then in the building.
Well, Jim, an extension, I think, of what this band has been doing for the last couple of years. These parking lot experiments where they pass out the cassette tapes of individual tracks to people and have them play them in sort of a parking lot symphony. And the Zurika album, which was essentially asked listeners to play 4 CDs simultaneously.
In a very 60s happening way. Gather 3 of your friends together, each of them bring a boombox to your house, 4 stereos, you all hit play at one time, and this symphony comes together. The car thing was 40 cars at once, each with a different part on cassette. You all hit play at the same time. They tried it again inside with 100 boomboxes at Metro, and they charged people a regular concert price. I thought that was a horrible ripoff. It wasn't nearly as magical as the cars, which was a pretty good trick. You could have looked at the last 2 years since their big hit with She Don't Use Jelly, actually 5 years ago now, and said, Wayne Coyne's lost his mind. What the heck is this guy up to? But now he's taken all that weird experimental stuff and put it into a pop album.
Right. Yeah, he's essentially created a situation where he's trying to get deeper and deeper into the sound and bring the people, the listeners, with him, and recreating these experiences where you're actually inside the music. And I think they pulled it off not only in those parking lot experiments. The first one I saw in Austin was just a brilliant, gutsy kind of thing that
I had one of the cars
pulled off.
I was in it. I had a rental car. I played it. My tape sounded like an elephant snoring.
Right.
And the way that it came together with the other tape.
Well, they really pulled it off over the weekend with film and music and hitting the gong about 80 times. They have great use of a gong. And we'll have Wayne Coyne of Flaming Lips here a little bit later on. Robyn Hitchcock, who also is on the tour, is coming up next. So we'll talk with Robyn, and Robyn will play a few songs here on Sound Opinions on 93 XRT. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Sound Opinions on 93 XRT. Jim DeRogatis from the Chicago Sun-Times, Greg Kot from the Chicago Tribune. I'm Marty Lennartz, and we're now joined by Wayne Coyne of the fabulous Flaming Lips, the man who put together the 1999 International Music Against Brain Degeneration Revue that was at Metro over the weekend. Amazing show.
Well, thank you, Marty. You know you used the same introduction, the fabulous Flaming Lips, as I think that woman on 90210 used. Remember when we were on Beverly Hills 90210?
I thought I coined that. I've made it a point. I've written about you 143,000 times.
The fabulous Flaming Lips.
Every single time.
See, I was just giving a nod to Jim. I didn't realize.
Oh, I see. Of all the words people could use, it's the fabulous Flaming Lips.
Well, it's alliterative, and
it seems a little bit of a tongue tripper for me, though.
I think that's what's charming about it. The fabulous Flaming Lips, ladies and gentlemen, Oklahoma City.
Anything involving tripping is worth.
Okay.
Well, there you go.
Right.
Well, it's proper tripping. Good catch, Greg.
Absolutely. So
Wayne?
for that.
Hello, Jim.
Where the hell did this idea come from? The International Brain Degeneration Music Against Brain Degeneration.
Well, I got it. We thought of the idea when we were doing South by Southwest, the show that you saw. We were approaching some idea that we wanted to do.
Yeah. You guys in Mercury Rev.
If we were going to do a tour, how would we go about doing it? And some guys from Pavement were down there, and Jonathan and a couple other bands that seemed interested in these same type of ideas. So I mentioned it to them in this kind of review-esque sort of way, where it would be sort of a bunch of bands, but it would be quick and sort of packed with entertainment, and sort of the things would happen fast. And
Soul-style review.
Well, I wish it was, but we do the best that we can with the music that we're offering. But to have it be a variety of things, not just the same band, but sort of different haircuts and guitars or something. I wanted it to be a variety show aspect.
Well, two nights at Metro. First night sold out. Second night close to being there. Sonic Boom of the great Spacemen 3.
Totally, yes.
Doing his speak and spell.
His speak and spell thing. And I think it really is interesting in the way that he does his thing. I think some people have seen Sonic do that show at 1 o'clock in the morning when it lasts an hour after you've been at a club for 4 hours.
He kind of jury-rigged analog synthesizers.
Exactly. I was at his house in, I guess, when we were on tour in England about 2 months ago, and we were close to Rugby, where he lives. And I went to his house, and I explained that last night, that when I walked in there, we expected you're going to go to Sonic Boom's house, and there'll be all this stuff set up, and it'll the Spaceman 3 sort of legendary guy that you think of. But inevitably, reality is probably always different. You show up and he's got a dog and a carpet and no instruments anywhere or something. But we get there and it's exactly like you think it's going to be. And he's got all that gear set up there.
This was my experience in Oklahoma City.
Well, right. But you expect the worst. You think you're going to get there and they're like, oh, we don't really play. We bring in instruments or whatever. But Sonic Boom was just like I'd hoped he would be. And I walk in there, I say, oh, Sonic, this looks interesting. What are you doing? And then he explains it all. And that's really what he's doing here. I was so intrigued by the way he was doing his stuff that I thought, gosh, and he really is a great guy. I think people would think of, when you think of Spaceman 3 and Spectrum and even the spiritualized stuff and how all they're connected, you would think that he would be some esoterically drug damaged.
Well, there's song weirdo. Titles, album titles like "Making Music to Take Drugs to Make Music to Take Drugs By," and whatever that was.
He's got a great imagination, and he is smart, and he is.
Oh, is that what it is?
He really is fun. I mean, it's surprisingly how charming he is, and really, that to me, the people who are on our tour specifically, to me, that really sometimes rises above even their musical qualities because. I don't know. I think that's the way it should be. I wish people sometimes were judged more for their humanness and not their art sometimes, because a lot of people I know that do sometimes great art are horrible people. And a tour is made
we don't
up
know
of
anybody like that, do we?
Jeez, Greg, everyone I've ever interviewed has been a saint.
But a tour of this magnitude, really, it's mostly about hanging around with each other. I mean, the music happens, but it happens, in an hour and a half and the whole thing's over. And, and months of your life are spent with people just doing stuff, and it's a lot of hard work. So we didn't want to be surrounded by these sort of prima donnas who think that they're rock stars. So really everybody that we have with us, it really is fun for us to be
on
there.
The bill, and Robyn Hitchcock, obviously.
And Robyn, and even as the tour goes on, these other bands that are going to join up. So when you see us on stage sort of having fun and liking each other and all that, I mean, it's real. It's easy to go up there and present these things because I had no idea I was going to end up being the MC. I really thought, well, we'll get somebody.
Oh, no, wait a minute now. Here's the
Right.
false modesty again. This is your show. You conceived it.
Well, sure.
Down to the point of what? You have 1,000 pairs of headphones?
Well, not 1,000. We bring about 600, and so it's 1,000 is a lot to carry around.
Greg,
Right.
he's never going to make sense of this. You explain what that was about.
The headphones were, I've never seen anything quite like this at a rock concert. I've been to probably 1,000 rock concerts just this decade.
This year.
Nobody's ever given me a headphone at the start of a show. I go, what are these things for and how does it work? I had to ask somebody, where's the button for this thing because it was so dark in there. But I have to say, Wayne, when I was flipping the headphones on and off, figuring, okay, what's going on? Is this improving anything? I got addicted to it. I said, this is really cool. I like the way this thing is sounding through these headphones, and basically what we were getting is the mix that you were pumping through the PA, but much more detailed,
Right.
and much more nuanced.
Broadcast what, on an FM signal?
Well, it is. I mean, and you said earlier that you thought some of this stuff was slightly illegal.
Yeah.
And it isn't necessarily
Chicken
legal
traffic
or not
patterns are
legal.
real
I mean,
here.
in the sort of couple of weeks that we were pursuing this FM broadcast thing, because it really is just like a little radio station. You can sort of order them, build them in your garage.
Just
and they
pirate
work.
radio, essentially.
Exactly, and you stick an antenna on there, and you can broadcast for a couple of miles. It's really, I think it's a 1 watt sort of broadcasting. But there was a couple of week span where we had kind of come to the conclusion that's what we were going to pursue. That's how we were going to do this thing. And at the beginning of this couple week span, to get a 1 watt transmitter was illegal. It just flatly was. And I tried to order them, and you had to have all this written permission from the FCC and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, because the government
And you know
continues
me.
to try to crack down on these
Right,
pirate
right.
radio.
Exactly. And you know me, I would try to do it anyway.
Right.
So I'm trying to do it anyway. I don't really want to break the law, but I want to do these shows.
But if it stands in the
Right,
way, well,
right.
yeah.
But luckily, and things do work out for me sometimes. Luckily, in this couple of week span, the FCC actually lightened their restrictions, and they lifted it up to 10 watts. They actually don't care about anymore. And in this span of a couple of weeks, from when it started out, I was pursuing it. It was illegal. A couple weeks later, they didn't care. So when I tried to order it 1 week, I couldn't get it. I tried to order it the next week, and they were like, "Oh, you can get it now." So lucky for me, because we really thought we would be hiding the radio station in someone's briefcase. So
Right.
when the FCC showed up with the handcuffs, they would say, "I don't know who's doing it," and we'd all run around and escape.
Greg, we have to fill in the rest of the blanks of this show.
Definitely.
The video screen. Stephen, who's been the drummer, is now on multi-instrumental. Just invaluable. It's pedal steel,
I gotta
guitar.
say something about Steven, because I didn't get to see him up close in Austin because of the distance from the stage, but we had a good vantage point last night, or over the weekend, watching the show. And Steven is amazing in terms of just the parts he was coming up with. I mean, he wasn't just sort of doubling the vocal lines or accenting the melody. He was developing counterpoint melodies on the vocals and in the keyboards.
Oh,
And
exactly.
it was sort of this quasi-classical thing going on, and combined with the tapes of magnificent orchestrations that
Leonard
you guys had on
Bernstein
stage.
in
Leonard
2001.
Bernstein
And
conducting and bombs exploding on the video screen. You got this complete sense around kind of thing going on. I'm going, Pink Floyd tried to do this kind of thing in stadiums. These guys are doing this thing at a club.
I disagree. I mean, if you look at the history, I think it's what people were trying to do in 1967 at happenings,
Right.
like the 14-hour Technicolor Dream, where these
totally a
things,
throwback to
you know,
that.
all that hippie crap history stuff we read about that
Right.
we've never lived in because we're too young.
Right, but I'm wondering, bands don't do this kind of thing anymore, and on this kind of ambitious level, and especially for what was it, $22 for a ticket?
You got to
had
be losing
4
your
bands.
shirt. You're not
He-
making any money,
He
right?
pays for these headphones.
Oh no, just the opposite. No, I mean, really all this stuff. Even though I think it's based in kind of a technology sort of thing, it's really all cheap junk. I mean, the headphones are good. I mean, I did a lot of testing to see, which headphones actually would work the best, because there's a lot of varieties out there, and there's a lot of good cheap stuff made. The radio station stuff, that's relatively cheap.
But how the heck do you change 600 pairs of batteries?
Well, you don't need to, really. The batteries, I mean, this stuff works real good. Those batteries will probably last for a month. I mean, I've tested it, really. I really thought it would be a lot worse than it is, and it really works kind of on its own. And people actually cooperate. The biggest problem is that we thought that we'd give these headphones out to people, and they would all just steal them.
Yeah.
That's how much faith I have in our audience, that you give them something, and they'll steal from you.
You need to be
Well,
realistic.
that's the first
You
thing
need
you
to-
think about when you're giving away
Well,
something
exactly.
like that.
That's practical,
Yeah,
So
sure.
I beg, and we set it up, and we organize it in a way that we want you to give them back, and we just hope that people cooperate. And for the most part, they do.
Mm-hmm.
And so that really is the other side of it, that it really, everybody wants it to work, and if they want it to work bad enough, it seems like it can. And so, but I do think sometimes the Flaming Lips in general are in a position to try new things. I mean, we have an audience that kind of has some expectation of what are the weirdos going to give us tonight sort of attitude. And so I think we do have a little bit of an opportunity there to say, well, they want us to do it, so let's do something.
Well, we want to play a song.
Okay.
From the new album, The Soft Bulletin. Greg and I have been talking about it for weeks. We've played a couple of tunes. We haven't played this one.
Yeah. What are we going to do, the Spiderbite Song?
Spiderbite Song.
Okay.
You got a tale about this?
Well, the song itself is a tale of it starts off with a spider bite, and then there's a car accident, and then there's kind of this
Typical Flaming Lips song.
Yeah, and then there's kind of this ending that sort of puts them all in this nice metaphor about the the risks of love and its benefits and its hazards. So I think the song kind of explains itself, huh?
Well, we'll figure that out if we listen to it.
Okay.
Flaming Lips from the new album Soft Bulletin. It's called Spiderbite. Now, you guys sound checked that last night in front of the audience.
Isn't that just an absurd idea? But
It was a great idea.
It's so practical. I mean, we started doing that in England when we were opening up for Mercury Rev a couple of months ago, and because we wouldn't have time to do a sound check. And I just thought, the audience really doesn't care that much. I think they would rather you spend a couple of minutes, talk to them, and let them know what's going on, and have the songs actually sound good, than go out there with this pretense of, we've worked hard all day.
Right.
And we're professionals, and we've molecularly worked it all out so that we know what the room's going to sound like empty, and we know what it's going to sound like full. And everybody knows you go to rock concerts, and the first song...
They write off the first three songs. Yeah.
They always do. And sometimes that's the best song. I mean, sometimes I go to concerts, and bands will play their greatest song first, and the sound is so utterly bad that you've just paid your money for the one song, and it's done and over with, and you didn't recognize it. So I go out there, and I tell people sort of, well, here's what we're doing.
Demythologizing the whole thing, breaking down that fourth wall.
But I think that's kind of, it's about time.
That's
I mean,
cool.
the routine of rock shows to me is half of what makes them so predictable and boring, is that you really do feel like you've seen this thing happen so much that it's no different than going to a movie and going, well, we go in, they show previews, and then we see the movie, and there's a little spot where we go and get some popcorn, and then you try to pee at a certain time, and it becomes predictable. It's safe. And I think sometimes it takes that element of the excitement of, I wonder what's going to happen out of it. And you, like you said, you go to 1,000 shows, and you don't actually wonder what's going to happen. You wonder, oh my God, I wonder what time I'm going to get home, because this is going to be some endurance
when is the top
test.
10 hit coming?
Yeah.
Now, Wayne, one thing I was noticing last night, I wrote this in my review, was that what you guys were doing reminded me a little bit what Kraftwerk did on their last tour, where they essentially took their Kling Klang studio and brought it with them on the road. Except it took them 15 years to get that up to speed to bring on the road.
Right.
You guys are touring essentially as a four-piece, fairly traditional rock band, a fairly great traditional rock band in previous incarnations. But now the emphasis is really shifted toward, you talked about this idea of playing the studio. And it seemed like this was part of fitting into what you're talking about there over the weekend.
Yeah, well, right. And I, for some reason, I don't know why it never seemed, a couple of years ago, it seemed there was some tradition to hold up for some reason it seemed, live music as opposed to pre-recorded music. I think it was all in my mind, and I don't know why I cared so much. I mean, because a lot of the things that I thought of even back then, for some reason I just thought, well, we'll just go out and this is the way we play, and I kick myself now for not having the ideas and pursuing them when I get them, and that's what I started to do with the parking lot and the boombox stuff and all that stuff. I just figured, well, I'm just going to start to do what I like, and really, if an audience likes it, fine, and if they don't, well, I can't really do more than that. This is what I want to do. And I think somewhere along the way, that's been what makes it so enthusiastic to do these things. Because I like to do it. And it doesn't feel weird to me at all now. I think at the very beginning, there was just a slight hesitation. And because the idea occurred to me not as a big concept where we thought it all out. It just really occurred to me as even in the way that we're speaking now. Me and Scott were talking about, well, how do you think we would do this? And just a second later, I thought, well, we could just play a tape. And sometimes I say these ideas, and I think people are like, oh, but that'd be stupid. That won't ever work. I mean, and that's how Zurika happened. That's how the boombox things happened.
The 4 CD thing, the boombox. Well, I was lucky enough, Greg, to be in Oklahoma during the Clouds Taste Metallic sessions and see an entire song come together. Brainville University tuition $1.
Exactly.
It took 3 days. It started with Wayne and acoustic guitar. He had like 2 chords. He had like 3 lines. And it built into this incredible symphony. There was a half-hour argument at one point. They wanted to put some hand claps. right? And Wayne is saying it's got to be like the Cars on Let's Go, and Steven is saying no, we want the hand claps that are on Bowie's Hunky Dory, and they're playing these records, they're listening to them. Dave Fridman, the engineer from Mercury Rev, is saying you're both wrong. It's got to be the Queen hand claps, right? And they find and you can't even hear. I helped them hand clap. You can't even hear the Finnish hand claps. Right? But it was amazing to see over 72 hours this song come together. Now the spirit was very much the same as was there on stage last night. There was this kind of Wayne doing his psychedelic Will Rogers cheerleader, but in a very subtle way. So Wayne, one of the things I've noticed about you, you're developing into quite the messianic guru. You get people. No, he gets people. He gets 40 people to drive cars and park them in order and play tapes. He gets 100 people to play boomboxes.
A catalyst. That's what he is.
Yeah, but without seeming so.
Yeah, right,
you know, I mean, if the man had a bent for fascism, he could be dangerous. But I don't understand how you talk people into this stuff. I saw you do it, and I still don't understand it.
Well, I start off with my friends as usual. You know, I start off with people who sort of trust me and think, oh, this is kind of worth doing, and I just sort of build from there. And some of it, no one else could explain it, so I really kind of have to. And sometimes I think if I explain it right, even if it doesn't work, people understand what we're trying to do, and they kind of, will just cooperate and see if it works. And especially with the stuff like the parking lot stuff and the boombox stuff, I think people felt like, okay, Wayne, you know what you're doing. We don't know what you're doing, but we'll cooperate. And then there is that moment when it works. You don't have to know what's going on. You understand what's happening musically and idea-wise, and regardless of how it got there.
Right.
And I think with this format that we're doing on stage, it really doesn't take that much explaining. It's like, hey, we're up here, we're going to do our songs,
right.
And you don't really have to know how it works. All you got to do is stand there and like it. It's a lot. To me, it doesn't take me doing much with the audience. It takes me more doing stuff with the stage crew and everybody there to say, here's why we want to do it this way. This is why this has to work and all that. But I'm lucky that people give me, a little bit of cooperation and enough time to sort of see if it's going to work before they think I'm a lunatic. But I do try hard to convince people I'm not a nut. And, and your book points out how much drug damage and people being eccentrics and the weirdos of the world. And I do spend most of my time trying to convince people, look, I'm not some drug damaged nut. I mean, I when I saw you 3 or 4 months ago at the Brian Wilson show, I was back there and I interviewed him. And I'm interested.
Has that aired yet? It's going to air on HBO, right?
It'll probably. I don't know if it should air, but it might. Let's say that. But
an inspired pairing, you and Wilson.
But I talked to him, and I realized I don't want to be a 60-year-old guy who can't tie his own shoes. I wish that we could look at musicians and men in general as they get older, they get wiser. These experiences add up. But with rock guys, it sort of seems like if you're 40 years old. You just end up being some David Crosby drug casualty.
Drooling on yourself, yeah.
It's ridiculous how people want to applaud this. The fact that he's alive seems to be his greatest achievement.
Right,
and I'm like, well, the guy that works at Target is alive. Go and applaud him or something.
Yeah.
And so I don't want anything to do with that. I don't want people to think that I wake up in the morning and drool on myself and that's how these ideas come. I make an effort and almost show people that this is hard work. I want to work hard because I want it to be good, and I hope when you applaud the work that we've done because we came and we were prepared, and this isn't just some flimsy half-baked idea.
Well, you were literally giving your blood last night.
Not my real blood.
Splashing all down his head.
We got to take a break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to have you and Robyn Hitchcock together.
All right, we'll see what happens, huh?
Yeah, you'll be back.
That's right. All right, it's Sound Opinions on 93 XRT. Welcome back to Sound Opinions on 93 XRT.
I'm Jim DeRogatis.
And I'm Greg Kot.
And I'm Marty Lennartz. The
These
two
guys
guys
are
talking in the background
talking
here.
right
Robyn
over
Hitchcock
everything. That's great.
and Wayne Coyne of
It's a clashing
Flaming Lips.
of philosophies over here, really.
Hello, yeah. We're just discussing the effect of vari-speed, or whether you want it or not.
Well, it all started out where we got in the car today, and we were having a lengthy conversation yesterday about John Lennon. And we got in the car today, and I was remarking about how John Lennon had a turntable installed in his Rolls Royce so he could listen to records when he drove around town. And I was pointing out, and I was pointing out to Robyn how absurd this would be because it's a fragile device. The needle sits on the vinyl, and in a car, especially on those cobblestone streets in England where he's driving around, it would never work. It would just bounce off. And I suggested, why didn't he just bring a reel-to-reel deck and listen to music
but
that
Wayne,
way?
it was for when he parked and shagged the birds.
Well, okay, that's the real reason. See, to me, I would do it simply to hear the music. And so Robyn was...
I always thought it was on a gyroscope, that he had it so that when he went over the cobbles, if he drove over pheasants or whatever, and there was a bump, he could still listen to Wider Shade of Pale. Also, I mean, I was alive at that point, and Jarl were probably much smaller or more fetal than what I was. And
Yeah.
I'm pretty certain that in '67 he probably wasn't shagging the birds, because I think he was just doing acid.
Well,
So
wasn't
it was a simple routine.
Norwegian Wood, right? 66, 67.
Come on.
No, that came out in '65.
Oh, that's
But
so it's earlier.
I don't think.
You mean the whole year? You're thinking that the whole year he didn't shag anybody.
I think by '67 it was probably quite difficult for him because he was very spaced out.
Have you had some experience with this, Rob?
Not personally.
Oh, I see.
Certainly not then. But I mean,
No, I mean you seem to think that because he was doing drugs that he wouldn't have been shagging. Shagging has become a sort of popular
all right,
American
they're not
term
mutually.
lately.
I know. I'm not sure how happy I'm about this term getting over here. It's a shame it was
You
contained in
started
Britain
it,
for
yeah.
centuries, you know,
Right,
and then it's
right.
like some virus. It suddenly leaked out.
Well,
so now it's over here.
Right.
That's true.
All right. So have you met Austin Powers?
No, well, see, Austin Powers isn't a real person, Robin. See,
But you
he's
are
a-
on the soundtrack, right? The lips are on the sound. But wait a minute, we were on this psychedelic drug
Okay,
thing.
right,
You
right.
guys get thrown. You've been asked this. I've asked you this. Many people have asked you this many times. Psychedelic drugs, and to what extent they play into the surrealism, the
Right.
imagination, the weirdness,
The fuel,
of both of your music.
Yeah, the fuel of the engines of our imagination, so to speak. What about you, Robin? Psychedelic drugs?
No, don't like them. I was influenced by people who took them,
Mm-hmm.
but I could see what it did to them. You know, it's like mortgaging your future. All those people like Barrett, even Lennon, Brian Wilson,
Rocky
everybody,
Erickson.
You know, and I mean, even people like Dylan, they definitely went through. And you trade in, you know, God knows what for 6 months of brilliance or something like that. And I was always very wary of LSD. And on one of the few times I took it, I tried writing a poem, and I just thought, well, there's no point writing a poem. Everything's happening anyway. And as someone who I like to create, I like to produce things. You know, my neurosis or whatever says, my work ethic says, get up and write a song, Robin. That's what you're here for. You know, acid was completely against that for me.
Now, Wayne, your first record company was Lovely Sorts of Death Music.
Yeah, I could see where people could think
the
that,
LSD, yeah. But you've spoken many times about you don't need that stuff.
Well, I've never been against it, but see, sometimes that the stance is either you're for it or against it, and I really don't care what people do with their own brains. It's from my experience, and mine hasn't been necessarily through seeing what artists do. I really have just watched my brothers and my friends and all that, and just seen what they do when they take drugs, and they don't do anything. You know.
But it's interesting that
Yeah,
both of you
yeah.
guys can access a place of real creativity and surreality.
Surrealism, yeah.
Well, everybody
Those
does.
pictures,
Everybody
those word
dreams. You
pictures.
know, I don't think Hieronymus Bosch or Salvador Dali or Giorgio de Chirico or H.G. Wells or anybody, you know, needed to take mind-expanding drugs. It's really disabled people, you know. This, and it's also, I think, it defiles the imagination. People say, "Oh man, what are you on? What a far-out thing to say! You've had an idea." Kids have ideas.
You've got an idea.
No, please.
But I think
Our
think
editors say that to Greg
I
and
think
I a
people
lot.
wrongly will think that these heightened moments are because of the drugs. These genius moments were fueled by the drugs, and I just think it's a convenient way to say, well, you know, regular people can't do that, so you have to be on drugs or a madman. I mean, that's the other aspect.
Well, that's the
of-
great romantic
Yeah.
tradition
Yeah.
is the
Yeah.
deification of the madman that as truth sayer.
Right, and it really, I guess it's such a good story to tell, you know, because really most of the people that, for the most part, it's just too much work. I mean, what I do really is, you know, it's boring. It really is tedious, boring stuff. I mean, I've used the analogy of when we're recording a record in the studio, it's like watching grown men put together a jigsaw puzzle. It's just dull.
I don't know. Those
You
72
mean the
hours
practical
flew by.
aspect of it.
Yeah.
You don't mean your work's dull, but you mean the
Well,
way
no,
you do
I
it.
think
is
hopefully when
refined.
people actually hear what we've done, it's exciting to them. But the actual process itself, I think, is really long and boring and isn't very interesting.
Well, you know, and one thing I'm hearing in both of your music is that everyday life is pretty cool. Everyday life is a psychedelic experience. It doesn't. You don't have to be ingesting large amounts of drugs.
Everyday
Exactly.
life
Get
is
it.
an experience, and it only happens once. You have
Right.
all eternity in which not to exist. You know, even when you're tying up a shoelace, remember that you'll never tie that shoelace at that time
There you
again.
go.
You know, you may tie it tomorrow, but each time's, you know, even eggs over easy or something like that. Most of us live a very routine life.
Well spoken, Robin. Yeah,
It's a very zen. My mind is blown now.
But it isn't zen. I mean, people do throw that around a lot as though that's some unpractical way to go about, you know, living your life. But especially in this way where, you're in a band and records come out and people pay attention to these moments where things happen. And, life is not, you can't live it for these moments that may happen and may not. You really have to be present and aware and
Sure.
observing while you're here. And if the moment comes, observe it too. But if it doesn't, you don't want to wait around.
Wait a minute. Now, we have a moment. We have Robyn Hitchcock here and
We
Wayne
do.
Coyne.
We
Robyn
do.
Hitchcock has a guitar in his arms. Is there a moment you guys can lay upon us? Have you got any common ground?
I don't know.
We've never sung.
No, we
actually,
don't.
at
No.
all. I don't know.
We argue about John Lennon all the
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
I mean,
We could do Give Peace a Chance.
We
Remember we were talking about that yesterday?
We can all join in on that
we
one.
are say, remember? And I was saying that just seems so silly. And you could sing it. Do you know Give Peace a Chance?
Can you do the Yoko part
I
to
don't
Wayne?
know. Actually, there's. We could almost do. We could do. We argue about John Lennon, but we. What do we agree about?
Oh, we
We
agree
about
about.
the nature of matter in life, or something.
I
We
think.
agree about not wasting time.
No, we agreed about those chips the other night. Those.
Oh Christ, yes.
We liked those.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And we agreed that the hummus was too hot the other night.
That's right. Yeah. It was, and the chips. Those chips. Yeah. I was imagining English chips.
But the problem with when they give you the same thing every night is you like them on the first night, and then they show up again 8 hours later at the next place. And then you eat them again, and after 3 nights of those same chips, even though they're marvelous the first night, after 3 or 4 nights, you never want to eat
That
them
is the
again.
danger of repetition. That's how the
Totally
mind
is.
becomes dull.
Totally,
What was
yeah,
once
yeah.
thrilling becomes dreary.
Right.
This is just like a talking blues, really.
The Talking Chips Blues.
Yeah, because I was a little boy once, and I had that rainbow. And then I looked over and I saw that Wayne had a rainbow too, but his was called a Waynebow.
Oh, I've got a good rainbow. If you keep going, I was actually on the way to Sonic Boom's house on the way to Rugby, and we saw a rainbow. And I asked someone, whoever's around me, I asked them questions, and I wondered, why is the rainbow round? Why is that? Why isn't it straight sometimes, or oblong, or whatever?
Square.
Why is it round? And no one seemed to know, but I think I know now. I think it's because the sun is round, and we're seeing this glow of the sun. And the way I'm proving that is I was up in a plane right after that. And you know
did you
how
see?
rainbows, when you're on the ground, you see the top of it like that. I was up in a plane and I saw the
You saw
bottom.
the whole rainbow.
I saw the bottom of a rainbow. The
So is it like a
rainbow,
U?
The rainbow was below me. So that
Did it
proved
still have a top as well, or you just
it
had
didn't,
like a...
because
oh,
I was above the clouds.
So it was an upside down rainbow.
So I've seen the tops of the rainbows, and they have bottoms as well, and that's how I'm proving my speculative nature that it is actually really round. Only we're just seeing the top half of it.
Wayne, you wanted to be a scientist, and Robyn, you wanted to be an entomologist. Is that right? Is it safe to assume?
No, I wanted to be a scientist too, but I wasn't good at maths, or what y'all call math.
Oh yeah,
So
I wasn't
I was
either,
supposed to
right.
be a scientist.
Right.
I was, that was the whole thing. I wanted to build a time machine, and that was my ambition as a kid, and simple things like that, conquer antimatter. But they said actually you've got to understand numbers, and all the teachers had bad breath or whatever. So, so I went. I
That English
drifted into
school
the
system.
arts, but
It's ruined many a
Right.
fine young boy, that
Yeah,
English
but I
school
think
system.
in the idea of self-analysis, which is a lot of times what art really does. In a way, it says, well, what's interesting, and all you really know about is yourself. In the idea of self-analysis, I use a scientific basis of analyzing myself, and I test things to say, well, do I think this? And I don't just want to arrive at an answer without some sort of proof. So I use these ideas of true experimentation, which are really, I think, the basis of how we've progressed in the 20th century. Here is we ask the question, we wonder about the results, and then we do something with the results that we have.
have we progressed in the 20th century?
I don't really know, Robyn.
Or have we just, I can't even say we've got through it because
I
so
don't
many
know.
people didn't.
Right.
We've managed to have the Battle of the Somme, the Holocaust, and
Right.
Hiroshima, and that's just for starters.
Well,
Well, and I think Wayne, the Soft Bulletin is very much an album about standing on the edge of the millennium.
Well, I don't think it is on purpose, though.
Yeah, but
No.
there's this cumulative effect. It's not a concept album in that hoary sense, but there's all these songs about racing for the prize, looking for a cure. Spider bites you and you're dead, and you're bleeding from the head from a soft bullet, and
Right,
there's
that's-
this kind of millennial chaos.
Well, there's some urgency to be aware of your situation, at least. I mean, we talked about this slightly the other day, where people walk in. Actually, it was the new Chris Rock special. I'm not plugging that, but he mentions this. He thinks that here we are at the end. It's almost the year 2000, and they haven't cured things like cancer and AIDS and stuff like that. And the interesting thing about that is people walk around, and there's this they that they presume should have been working on this stuff while you were out listening to music and smoking pot and having a good time. That there was these people who were supposed to be working on these floating cities and curing cancer. And I don't think that. I don't proclaim that there should have been a they that was supposed to make great art or cure diseases or anything. I say, look, we're the ones. I mean, now it's our turn. We're the ones in our 30s with opportunity and money and experience. Why don't we make floating cities? Why don't we make this stuff that we're complaining isn't here? So once I arrived at that sort of thinking, I thought, oh, well,
time to get to work.
Yeah,
so Wayne is now building a floating city.
Yeah, that's right.
I think I can do it. I do. I think I'm going to start with a shopping mall.
This wide-ranging philosophical discussion is taking place between Wayne Coyne of Flaming Lips, Robyn Hitchcock, Jim DeRogatis, Greg Kot, Marty Lennartz here. It is Sound Opinions on XRT.
Where do we go with these guys, Greg?
I don't know.
Let's ask a simple
I thought
question.
that Talking Blues was great.
You normally have commercials.
We have a ways before we have to get to that.
Things are normally interrupted every 3.5 seconds.
We try to avoid those
I want to talk about the films. Robyn, Jonathan Demme, great director, Silence of the Lambs and Stop Making Sense, so many wonderful movies. Made this movie with you, Storefront Hitchcock. It's finally going to open in Chicago. Hasn't had an opening. It's July 30th. Finally going to open at Fest. Wayne, your entire Soft Bulletin is laid out as a film score, a film. The art is very much filmic. Both of you guys seem to think cinematically about music.
Well, I don't think that music and visuals and all that, I don't think any of that should be exclusive. I mean, I think music has always needed a lot of stuff so you understand what it is. I mean, I think that there's a Stravinsky quote somewhere along the way that I'm paraphrasing, but music is just music, and you can call it, say, the planets. You hear music and you can envision galaxies exploding, or you can call it the Rite of Spring and you can see the sun rising and bees and flowers. But you have to guide people to something that these sounds or whatever are representing because it's so vague. But because it's vague, that's where it gets its powers, because it can kind of fit into any niche that you are guiding it to. And so I don't think that music just in and of itself is as good until you pile a bunch of stuff
Robyn,
on it.
What do you think? Demme, of course, made Swimming in Cambodia with Spalding Gray and gave visuals to these monologues. Was he trying to do the same thing with Storefront Hitchcock?
Actually, what he probably did was make it very simple. There's just things like a floating mirror ball, or there's one candle. And whereas my songs are very dense with words, and if he kind of complemented it by making it very spare, so that there is a visual element, but it's not nearly as dense or saturated visually as my songs. So the songs are allowed to unfold themselves in a fairly stark background. Half the time it looks like I'm performing in a church, actually. And that's the vibe I get from looking at the film.
And also, Robyn, the aspect of what you say between the songs being an important part of the live performance, which you really don't get on the studio records, but what Wayne was talking about sort of these piles of stuff. How important is that stuff between songs to, like, the presentation and explaining the songs? Do you feel that's a part of the art that you do, the stuff that happens between the songs?
I don't know. I've always done it, and I think the most important thing is that I only talk if I feel relaxed with the audience, and then if I do talk, then the audience feels relaxed too. So the biggest function, I think, is to unify me and the audience. Like taking it back to Dylan again, in the old days when Dylan cared to speak to the audience, they were much more one. Now he doesn't seem to say anything. There's a big distancing, and I know when I'm in a bad mood or having a bad show, I don't say things. So to me, it's more just a form of communication, and I'll just...
But I think it goes... I mean, personalities will speak no matter what. I mean, I think Sonic Boom, when he takes the stage, he says nothing. He just goes up there, and his intensity is actually there without him saying a word. You understand this is intense. And and so I don't think there is one way. I think there's millions of ways, and the way you want to do it is probably the best way for you to do it. Just, present yourself in the way that you're going to be the most powerful.
Well, we have to bid you guys adieu. I feel like we could do another 6 hours with these guys.
Let's do that, in fact.
You should fly to Copenhagen with us.
We're just going to do the whole tour, because this is going to be the most interesting show we've seen all summer, Jim. And,
can you tell that we're fans?
Let's go back.
We haven't dropped our icy critical facade, have we, boys? I mean, I've panned.
enough
I've also.
fawning for
I
you?
have panned also both of you at times.
Oh, hey.
You guys have gushed about as much as rock critics can do.
Well, don't think
That is
too
really
well
great.
of us. Wayne, we want to play another lip song on the way out. This is an outtake from the Soft Bulletin session.
Exactly.
It's called The Captain. It's been shortened from The Captain is a Cold-Hearted and Egotistical Fool. There's another half an hour or three-quarters of an album, right?
Of sorts. I mean, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not certain. Is it maybe 5 or 6 songs or something like that? But
Unbelievable.
we're always working on junk. So
Robin's been here an hour. He's written 3 more songs.
Oh, he's ready to go. Sure.
Well, Robin's already revealed that there's a box set somewhere stashed in the vaults. You know.
All right.
Well, we want to thank both of you guys.
Sure.
And,
Thanks for having us.
Hopefully you'll
Thanks for
come and
having
do
us.
it again.
Well, we'll be talking. Me and Robin will be talking for the rest of the month anyway. So.
Right, but
So just-
hopefully it won't all be taped.
Just give them a DAT recorder.
That's right.
Right.
Okay, the song
All
we're
right,
going
thanks,
out
bye.
with is what? The Captain.
The Captain.
The Captain. Thanks a lot for coming
All
by.
right.
Okay,
See you,
bye.
everybody.
See you later.